thankfully, we do have one of our most pro-liberty legislators, one of Colorado's liberty leaders, joining us now. We have a Representative Ken deGraaf. Representative deGraaf, how are you, sir?
There we go.
We
I'm well, Brandon. How are you?
Hey, doing well, doing well. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule, especially now that session has started. But yeah, thank you so much, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to join you.
Perfect, perfect, sir. Well, you definitely had a great start to the legislative session. First thing I want to ask you about is what happened on that first day of session. You brought up an amendment to a resolution that was setting the time and place for Our Excellency Jared Polis, the governor and supreme leader of Colorado, to speak the King Polis in front of the legislature like he does every year for a State of the State address. But you challenged that and you actually were able to strip Governor Polis of his title. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, it really wasn't. I can't say it was Polis specific. It was interesting because the Democrats, in complaining about him, generally refer to him as King Polis, and um, and I think it was probably last year. I don't remember when I noticed it because when I looked it up, I did find an initial speech from. The first governor, Governor Rout, I think it was Rout, but he was referred to as His Excellency. So I think it's been pretty consistent all the way back. But I don't know, last year something really hit. It's like that is just so wrong. That is just so wrong in a republic form of government. So yeah, I wasn't sure how, I did not know how that was going to go. So I did my research and thought through that, and it's something that's always impressed me that we have besides a capital that's was built using the energy and resources that the governor's desperately trying to cut out of Colorado between all the energy and all the mining and all the agriculture. Um, but yeah, so just wrote that up and thought, well, we'll just try it and we'll see where it goes. And I was surprised on the Democrat side, so almost unanimous on the House side. There was a few that came up after and said, well, they're stickler for either tradition or one just flat out told me he was afraid of Jared Polis and what he would do because he needs him to sign his bills, but he agreed with the overall concept. So I think it's much more fitting, the honorable. There is no place in statute where it says one way or the other that I could find. I mean, I didn't read the entire statute, so it could be in there. I can't prove that. I have not proved that negative. So yeah, I think it's a much more fitting thing. Now, some people thought, well, it's just symbolic or it's just a waste of time, and in some ways, maybe. But I think it does set the tone for the legislature on day one. If, someone comes in and we do all the His Excellency and, it really is a throwback to the monarchy. Um, I recognize that when all the states have a governor, that term is, probably problematic if you look at that just in that sense. But having His Excellency and saying that a person who is supposed to be the chief executive only, being referred to as His Excellency, I think is a bad start. So I think all the press that was around it and causing people to think through it a little bit. And I think it was a good recalibration on the values of our republic.
Rep deGraaf, one of my favorite things about watching the well is watching you because and this was a perfect example why because you come in there and you cause a little bit of a scene and it's a very very good scene. uh I'll just say that because these individuals are trying to attack us on a very fundamental level, whether it's our gun rights, our parental rights, our First Amendment, uh, our Tabor. Everything that we hold dear to our hearts is essentially under fire on a yearly basis. So it's great to see what you're doing down there at the Capitol. I know last not legislative session, but the last special session, you came out with your pick a penny tax, and we haven't had a chance to talk to you about that. What was it like to? What is it like when you're coming down to the Capitol and you have these little ideas in your head for certain amendments that are just going to throw everything up in a tizzy for the Democrats because you're really exposing them because your pick a penny tax really threw them off for about a whole hour of the legislative special session.
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing that was funny is because some of the Democrats thought I was serious, and of course, there was a level of, trepidation on my part of even proposing it because, I was afraid they might go, "Well, that's a good idea." I mean, for goodness sake, they look at 1984 as a how-to manual, and I think at some point somebody said something about taxing the very air you breathe, and then they figured out how to do it with carbon dioxide. So, you know. Um, it was done, of course, in jest, but there's if they could see a way to get money out of it, they would definitely try to do it. So yeah, I wasn't really sure about what the reaction would be there. I just knew I needed a way to emphasize that they were already taxing everything that could be taxed. And so that was just the only thing I could think of that was not currently taxed.
Well, and that's so important, I think, what you're doing as well, because, being in the minority, right? Being in some ways, in two minorities, because you're not only in the Republican caucus, which is the smaller number, 22 legislators, but even among the Republicans, you're the most pro-liberty, dedicated to the Constitution, at least that I'm aware of, in terms of your fighting, the bills you present, and everything you do down there. So I think it's so important, though, to say, well, what can you do, right? What can you do knowing the Democrats have this nearly supermajority, if you include some bad Republicans in it? But you can expose them, right? You can expose them. You can show what they're doing and really wake people up, hopefully, and create these opportunities for the public to understand this is what's happening, folks. This is what's happening in Denver at our state capitol. They're coming after everything that we hold dear, like Michael was saying. And here's somebody, Representative deGraaf, who's standing up, speaking out, calling them out, and exposing it. And I think that's such an important thing. So, I mean, how can you talk a little bit maybe about that in terms of, what can a good pro-liberty legislator like yourself do to fight back against this authoritarianism? And then, if you don't mind, what can we do on the outside to try and support you?
Well, the big thing is messaging. We need to get our message out, and going down to the well every day. You know So there's a level of what good does it do, right? And that's what people push back. It's like, well, I would come in and testify in committee, but what good does it do? I would call my neighbors, but what good does it do? I'm only one person. And then I say, well, I'm only one person. You like it that I'm down there, fighting now, but what good does it do? And that's, of course, what the Democrats want. They want, they want you to give up in despondency, and that's what, even on the Republican side, there are some that just want you to give up. I mean, when I was early on, and there was just, a lot of infighting, and well, I don't say we're not infighting, we're infiltrated. There's a lot of we have Republicans, and that is that if you look at the initial charter, and that's those are those people who are promoting the values of the republic. That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. It can't really get any basic more, well, I don't want to say basic, I mean, but it is that simple. Although those are very, very, very profound truths when you start to look at them, the historicity of those truths. So, um, but we really need to be engaged, and we need to get those truths out to people, because people aren't going to they can't vote properly if they don't know, and they can't know if somebody's not out there telling them. So we need people to share with their neighbors. We do that somewhat on Zoom, but we also need people, we're going to need people knocking on doors. And what this election comes down to, um, for what everybody can do is winning their precincts. And that's why I say that so often. People keep saying, well, what is the plan? What is the plan? What is the state going to do? And, I don't know. I don't talk to, I mean, Britta has her hands full. I've got my hands full. And the only thing that the state can do is encourage and give the resources to help people ultimately win their precincts because the precincts in this is the front line. A lot of people like to think that I'm the front line, and that's not the case. The front line is the precincts. The front line the is that person who is acting in the face of fear, courage, that they are rustling up the courage to, call their neighbor, or, call somebody else's neighbor, right? One of those things, public speaking is, feared worse than death, right? So, but I think overall we have about 2,000, I think it comes out to about 2,000 precincts with about 2,000, uh, we just, with about 2,000 voters in each, so we get about 4 million. And I think, ultimately, if everybody just starts where they are, kind of like I posted today, gentlemen, the war starts here. You just start where you are. And that is going to be educating your neighbors. Now, how do you do that? I don't know your neighborhood. I don't know you. I don't know your personality. But I think one of the best things that we can do is to go out and knock on doors badly. And by that, I mean, I think people recognize when somebody is doing this as a volunteer as opposed to a mercenary. And you go out and you tell them that, the Democrats are raising your energy rates. The Democrats are, they've implemented these climate goals, these, what are supposed to be cost-effective climate goals and how cost effective is it when we have to shut down the electricity to very large swaths of areas, and then fortunately it was in a relatively mild period, but that's that's millions of dollars that people lost, and it's not cost effective at all. One of the things they're bringing back again is the rest of 1312. There was a bit of an uproar, a lot of uproar last year. So they're bringing back the parts of 1312, which was the real meat of it, the real purpose of it, what I call the child snatching bill, right? It's to pull away children from parents that don't celebrate the genital mutilation or chemical castration and sterilization of their children. And the state, and then people think, well, that's only going to be an issue in a custody case. And it's like, well, the state can bring a custody case against you as well. So it doesn't have to be one parent versus another. You can have two parents. I'm fairly sure you could have two parents in this. I don't see anything that stops it. But that your neighbors need to know most of the state is walking around in blissful ignorance, and that's ignorance is bliss right up until it's not. And but that's ultimately what we need. So we're gonna really try to provide more content. Not content for entertainment's sake, but content for education. We want people to have an idea of what the bills are, what they're doing, why they're unconstitutional. I just looked at Liberty Scorecard a little while ago, at the bills that were out already, and they're just oppose, 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 oppose. Well, that's um, and I've had bills they oppose. We could talk about that. That was the trying to extend the um, senior citizen disabled vet tax rebate, and a very valid philosophical reason on that. But ultimately, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to educate the public more, and not just with a limited number of clips, but we're going to try to be able to educate the public on more of the bills. So hopefully, what people start seeing is they see, they see, oh wow, that's a lot of video clips in a day, and they're all different bills. And then they really start to get the idea that this is government being done to them and not for them. The what I call the disasters, the DSA-sters, whatever you want to call them, that they're disasters for the state. They're trying to impose an ideology that has, I mean, it depends on your metrics, whether it's failed or succeeded every time. It depends on where you look at it. From our standpoint, we see, hundreds of millions of people dead, mass starvations and government engineered famines. But on the Bolshevik side, the side that's doing that, those were successes because of the exact same thing. So, um, we really need to educate people what they're doing. We're going to try to give them the tools that they need to be able to look at what get an idea of what the content is. And what we really need the people to do is we need the people to call in and give testimony during committee. There are bills that were shut down because and people say, well, why should I do that? It's not going to make any difference. All they're going to do is pass it anyways. Largely, that's true. But there was a bill last year on education when there was so many people that signed on, and you guys are probably more remembering what bill that was that I was talking about. But there were so many people that wanted to call in. They just said we're not, and they took the bill off, and so that was a success. So the just the massive queue and the number of people. Now, that was because it wasn't as high a priority of a bill because like the SB, the 003, the bill by Gravedancer, that was um, they went through with that because that was a massive priority. Disarming law-abiding citizens is clearly a priority, as we can see in California, we can see in Minneapolis that they don't want the citizens to be able to defend themselves. So, anyways, that's kind of around some different areas. Sorry about that, but yeah, we need people. But that's the point. We need people to call in on these committees, and just sign up. If we have 20 people give good testimony. You can a great thing that you can do with AI is you can type in some notes and say, hey, I want to I want to testify. Give me 3 minutes of testimony on SB 25-003. Here are some points that I'm thinking about. You type in a few things, you hit go, it gives you some bullet points. You log on, you do 3 minutes. Well, it's only 3 minutes. But you know what? 20 people doing 3 minutes is an hour. 40 people doing 3 minutes is 2 hours. And that starts to add up. And then so instead of doing a committee where you roll through 5 bills in an hour, now 5 bills could take 5 hours. Now I don't want to be there for that. That's miserable. But right now, the only way that we can help the Democrats govern better is to help them govern less, right? So the only way that you're going to make the passage any better, and the citizens can do that. We have a million Republicans. I mean, surely 700 bills. If we have 20, people, that's only what 14,000 out of a million Republicans that would actually need to log in for any, take their turn and log in on any bill. So, that's what we need from the citizens. We need them to log in. We need money. I'm getting to the point where I need, fundraising. I've got to get into fundraising, and I can tell you who's not going to be given to me is it's the grift. The grift runs the Capitol, and they pay Democrats to grow it, and they pay those Republicans who will protect it. And so I guarantee you, they're not giving me money. So, uh, you know, the more we can, um, and I'd certainly rather have, from you know, enough people, $10 a month, schedule $10 a month for the next 10 months. And then do that with another rep as well. And our high constitution reps. We got, Bradley, Bottoms, Zamora, we got Baisley, we got, Sukla, and Brooks. And we've got a really good group, support those legislators. There's so many people that'll say, well, I'll support politics when you have pro-constitutional candidates. Like, all right, well, now we have some. So now you need to get in there. I think I've been thinking about one that would be like a Liberty scorecard challenge or something like that, where you do like, you take your baseline of about $10 per month, but then you multiply it by the Liberty scorecard score or something like that, so if somebody, if you're supporting a rep that is that's so-so on the Liberty scorecard, then that maybe their score is a 50 or a 60. Well, then maybe it'd be $6 a month instead of $10 a month, or 950 a month or something like that. And it would be just kind of a interesting way to go if the donations were based on Liberty scorecard, to encourage not people to follow Liberty scorecard. They're a great resource. So is Colorado Union of Taxpayers. That they're like having a phenomenal extension of staff research. But it would be an interesting way to encourage your rep to one, say, I'm watching how you're voting. It's a good accountability metric that way. I'm watching how you're voting, and I'm participating, and encourage them to uphold the principles. And if you're not sure what the principles are, both websites have them listed. So, but that's roundabout again. I'm sorry, but that's how you support us. Time, get in there in those committees, knock those doors, make sure your candidates are supported financially. Reward those candidates that are supporting constitutional values, because the return on investor special interest will not be supporting those constitutional candidates.
First off, I'm stealing Grave Dancer. That's my new nickname for him. That's absolutely incredible. Second,
Well, sorry, maybe I let that slip, but um, he it really bothers me that he takes an untouchable stance that, well, you can't. I mean, obviously what happened to his son is a huge tragedy. Now, I would contend that if the Second Amendment had been protected better, you wouldn't have that situation. And so for him to use that as a moral cudgel to disarm people and put other people in harm's way, I think it's fair to say that there's been a number of people harmed, robbed, killed based on his moral grandstanding. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I do think I think it's appropriate, because I think he is, he takes a stance that he cannot be questioned because of, the absolutely horrific thing that happened to his family. But he should not be using that to strip the rights of other people, because we know from history that doing that, I mean, we have hundreds of millions of examples of what happens when you strip citizens of the right to protect themselves. And um, what I call, history is a warning from the future, right? Like, hey, you look at history, and then you can see what the future is warning us about, and we could maybe stay away from that. But again, the Democrats read Orwell like a how-to manual. So, but I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
you're good. You're good. Yeah, it's way better than Stompin' Tom, which is what I've been calling him. So, for the same purposes.
I
Um,
like that
but
one too, though. I like that.
oh yeah. Grave Dancer is just cleaner. It's like, it's like what was it? The Social Network movie. Get rid of drop the. It's cleaner. So Digger it is. Um,
Dancer, dancer.
yes, Grave Dancer. Yes, yes, yes. So, but the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, you brought up precincts. I love the idea of getting in your community on a local level and really making an impact with your friends and neighbors, letting them know what exactly is going on at the state level as well as the local level. So I was wondering if you had a bit of a how-to of A, how you could get involved with your local precinct, and B, really what would be some key points to talk to about with your neighbors, because I'm sure you don't want to get too deep and heavy because you're going to throw them off. But what would be something that you might want to say to your friends and neighbors just to get them interested in getting involved?
Well, one that you could do is you can get your precinct list uh, from your county, right? Get your precinct list, contact all of the Republicans that are on there, contact and then maybe start there, right? Contact the Republicans. Hey, let's get together. Let's meet someplace. And I think you're right. I think be social. I mean, a lot of this is building community. Which, let's think about that. What was one of the big things they tried to erase during COVID? Well, they were trying to erase community. So, a lot of people kind of left community and went back into their comfort zones. And, we've got all the bread and circuses we need right inside our own homes. So, but I think there is a longing for, community. So, start with the Republicans. You have some commonality. You can start branching out from there with, the unaffiliateds that um, tend towards conservatism. And one of the funny things is I find with a lot of Democrats is when they find out exactly what the Democrat Party is supporting, they're not on board. They are not on board. They want to, they go out and uh, you know, one, if you can, if you can be human with them, if you can have a good relationship with them, if you can, that'll catch them off guard. But they're unaware. So I would start there, like start, basically a precinct is just is a big neighborhood or maybe a couple neighborhoods together. You know, maybe just plan to maybe you can just plan to meet at especially if you have a good conservative establishment, say you're going to meet there and then just have some time to discuss some stuff, maybe a quick rundown on some of the things that are happening. Um, and start from there and then organize teams, make it maybe make I've thought about this. I should do it. We need a door knocking bingo card or something like that, like maybe the center hole is the center square rather, is the grumpy get off my lawn guy, right? You're going to have to get that guy, right? You have to
Yeah.
get that guy. You have to get the guy who says, Trump's a fascist. Okay, well, I can knock that off. I'd like to talk. I need to talk to some of my friends who are, just troopers at knocking doors and find out like what that is. Have some fun with it. Go meet up someplace else afterwards. Knock on the doors because that's what it's going to come down to. And again, I think people resonate more with people who are doing it on a volunteer basis, who just come up to the door and say, "Look, I'm not being paid for this. This is just what I believe. We're going through a lot of challenges. I'm seeing our energy prices skyrocketing, right? I mean, they're all of a sudden we got a bill like for a couple $100. It was just like, oh, like some correction or something like that. Do you know what they're doing? Are you aware of these bills that they're doing with children? Are you aware of these bills, that they're, that that these climate mandates are costing us hundreds of millions of dollars a year? And now, a community, and just, have those conversations. And then, if somebody says they don't want to talk to you, get off my lawn, check off that center box and move on, right? Um, and so I think that's the key to winning the precinct. There's really no secret. It's getting out there and doing. It's winning their precinct is, it's like a journey of 1,000 miles. It starts with that first knocked door. And, we don't like it. We're averse to it in general. But that's how we win the state. You win your precinct. If you win all the precincts in your district, you've won your district. If you've won your district, you've won your seat. If we win enough seats, we have a majority. So, it doesn't really do all that much good to talk about winning the seats if we're not talking about winning the precincts. And there's no reason for anybody, the state, the county, nobody has any like secret way to make that happen. It is finding somebody who is willing in the face of fear to go out and act.
Well said, sir. Well said. Yeah, and like the myth of being ready. I think you hit on that, and I think that's so important for people to say, oh, I'm not prepared enough. I'm not polished enough. I'm not this enough. Doesn't matter. Go out and do it. Do it badly, like you were saying, Representative. I think that's key. I mean, that's Free State Colorado from day one. I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. Hey, 50 people care what I have to say. That's cool. Like that's exciting. You know what I mean? And then it grows and it grows, and if you keep doing it, eventually maybe you reach a lot of people. So that's the idea. Just do what you can, and if everybody did that small little piece of what they can, then yeah, the big problems are solved. And I think that's so important. But we do have a question here from the in the chat from the chat here on YouTube, and somebody's bringing up this idea of corruption, right, or investigating and auditing the Colorado government. And I think we see this right, Minnesota. It's been in the news recently. All the Doge stuff over the past 12 months. So I guess, Representative, kind of since you're down there, where would you suggest people look in terms of maybe the corruption, maybe in terms of the possible grift? I mean, what are some tips for people? Because we have a lot of great citizen journalists who are willing to dig in, who want to dig into these nonprofits, who want to track this money coming from the taxpayers to the government, going to special interests, growing to these different organizations that are political allies of legislators. And they're the ones giving them our money that we work so hard for. So any tips on where people can start? Where should they look? Any suggestions there?
I don't. Unfortunately, that is the data digging is definitely not my forte. I know I've been seeing some stuff by Data Republican that's you guys do research, and I think that's really valuable. I don't know if you post the links and stuff, like how almost it'd be value added, I suppose, like for the stuff that you do. Maybe post the path that goes with it. Like, how did I get here? Like, as you're going through the links, how did I get here? I'll do that if I'm doing research that I might have to reproduce, like every step that I go, like copy down the website. So I think there's a website called Data Republican or something like that. That one is growing quickly. Um, you know, s- uh, Google, not Google, but the AI it seems to be a very good tool for going in and digging into those things. Like, ask it a question, where would I find this? And it's pretty good at finding an amazing amount of stuff. But this all goes back to and that is value added. That's value added in terms of being able to tell people what's going on. But ultimately, everything, all of that comes down to, um, and it reminds me of something, that was said, I'd hear it, with church, like, don't be so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good, right? So it's what's happening on the ground. I mean, right? I mean, those are all good things. We want to know about those, but ultimately, we don't have any power. What's the power that we have to do anything about it? The power that we have to do with that grift, right? Because the purpose of government is grift, right? The purpose of all of these NGOs, all of this funding that they do, all of the bleeding heart, emo bait that they put on the hook is to get you, to get it dug into you so that they can fleece your pocket, so they can pick your pockets. So win your precinct. If you want to do something about the state of government, win your precinct. Win your district, win the seat, win the state. You know, uh, get Scott Bottoms in office, and then I day one, I think we're going to be done with the NGOs. And now one of the things about the NGOs is that I would go back to is because the reason they do all these NGOs is because they're non-audited government uh, organizations. So they're not non-government organizations; they're non-audited government organizations because Article 5, Section 34, and I know we've talked about this before, talks about how the government does not give money to anything over which it does not have absolute control. Okay, well, by law, they took money. They are under the absolute control of government. So they have put themselves as subject to the absolute control of government. So, if I were Scott on day one, I would go to them all and say, we're opening the books. We want to see everything, that where every single penny went. You are a government organization according to Article 5, Section 34. And then we do have absolute control over you, and you signed on, right? So pony up, give us your records. We're doing an audit, right? And by the way, you're not getting any more money, but you did get money. And so you're not getting any more. And we could probably clear up about half the budget right there. And then then you could start looking for but the it's more important to get rid of the grift than identify the jots and tittles in it, right? We want to get rid of it. We don't want to just, we don't want to just be able to trivialize around it. So win your precinct. You're concerned about grift, win your precinct. Concerned about children, win your precinct. Concerned about the environment, win your precinct. All of the questions have the same answer, and every single one of them is win your precinct.
I'm glad you brought up NGOs a little bit ago. Uh, my question.
Non-audited government organizations.
Exactly, exactly. NGOs are kind of tricky because another advantage of using an NGO sometimes is they can do things the government can't, particularly things that are unconstitutional. Is there a way that we could possibly rein in some of the unconstitutionality of these non-audited government organizations?
There you go. Well, win your precinct. That's how you, that's how you do this, right? Because they are government organizations, right? They are not authorized to do something unconstitutional. We are not authorized as a government to do something non-constitutional. We are not authorized as a government to fund something non-constitutional. So sending money to NGOs to do something non-constitutional is a breach of the oath of office. It's a betrayal of that office. It's however you want to term it. It is a betrayal of that. It is, you're giving money to somebody to do something that the government is not allowed to do. The government is not allowed to do what the government is not allowed to do. And you can't just pay somebody to do it. You can't just hire a mercenary and say, "Well, I didn't kill him because I paid the guy to do it, so it's not me." It's like, no, both are guilty, right? And we have this stuff with the government that we think, "Oh, well, they hired this organization and that organization did something unconstitutional, but the government can't really do anything about it." Like, no, the government has absolute control of that organization by Article 5, Section 34. And so it is 100% accountable, or should be. Now, why is it not 100% accountable? Well, because Weezer's not going to do anything to these people because he's as unconstitutional as anybody. So, um, the only way to get to the bottom of all this grift is to win your precinct, win the district, win the seats, win the state, and then end the corruption. Otherwise, we're just going to be frustrated. You're going to have a lot of information. You're going to have a lot of, really great charts, and then you're going to have the same people sitting in office, right? They don't care if you're mad. They care if you vote. They care if you win your precinct. Now, people on that regard, people say, well, then it's not any good because my vote doesn't count because of the corruption. It's like, well, there's some validity to that. But Trump is also in office, right? Now, that's because they were following his election very closely. So they still took the down ballot races, right? So does it make sense that Trump won all these and then there's still all these Democrats? That doesn't make any sense. So the only way to overcome the people that are not voting and the people that reliably don't vote are some of the most reliable voters, right? They just never know that they voted. Somebody who doesn't vote on a regular basis, their ballot is just ripe for picking. Then, somebody is invariably going to use it. Some of these states are finding they have like millions of more people on their voting rolls than they have voters. So, but what you want to do is you want to, well, after winning your precinct, work hard to win your precinct, but vote in person, vote close to the election. I always go in and ask if my voting ID has been voted. So I carry my mail-in ballot so they know that I didn't vote it, and then ask them if my vote has been counted already, and they'll look it up and say no, and then I can vote, and then I know. Then I have my, some semblance of a surety. The other reason is, if you don't, there is a level if you don't vote one way or the other, um, you're not really, you've indicated that either way is okay for you. So you can't really, you're not necessarily disenfranchised. And I know there's the problem, there's always the problem of voting for the lesser of the two evils. And, the lesser of two evils is still evil, and I do get that. But you know, the less, do you want less bad or more bad in that seat? When it finally comes down to it, the only options that you have are bad and less bad. Well, less bad is probably the way to go. And then if you're actually concerned, then you get involved the next time in the precinct strategy, win your precinct, caucus and assembly, be a delegate, learn how that works, vote, support constitutional candidates, be vocal, share with your neighbors. One of the biggest things that's happened, well, like for the church, as one church told me that they're intentionally neutral. And if you look at Bonhoeffer, I think a good summary of Bonhoeffer is intentional neutrality is active complicity, right? If you just, the idea that evil triumphs when good men do nothing. Evil triumphs when good men are intentionally neutral. That's, um, the when Belgium became neutral, the Germans didn't respect that anymore. They just ran through, and then they overran the French lines. So neutrality is actually is complicity in that regard. So always it comes back to winning your precinct.
Well said, sir. Well said. Do you have more time to spend with us tonight, or do we need to let you go here soon?
We have yeah, I have a little bit more time. Yeah.
Perfect,
You have
perfect.
something you
Because
want to talk about in particular?
I'd love to hear about your bill, 1037. House Bill 1037 ban government purchases from personal data from third party. So it's something we kind of you touched on briefly with Michael there, talking about how these organizations outside of the government don't necessarily have to adhere to the same restrictions that the government does. So they can go out there and collect our data, spy on us. We often give it willingly to these third parties, these companies, to provide us the right kind of advertisements, things like that. And then the government just says, hey, listen, we don't need the Fourth Amendment. We don't need to actually get a warrant. We can just go to these companies who've already collected this data, pay them with the taxpayer money, and then they're going to give us all this information about that. So 1037 is a bill that I'm really excited about. I think it's a great pro-liberty bill. And it's very interesting, Representative DeGraaf, to see you on the bill with two pretty hardcore Democrats, I'd say, Representative Jennifer Bacon and Senator Lisa Cutter. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that, and just if you're willing to share that with us, some information about this.
Yeah, the way that bill came about is we were talking to the ACLU about civil asset forfeiture. And now, civil asset forfeiture, bringing back again, I think it's important. That's 5A and 14A amendments that no one should be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. Cully versus, I'm drawing a blank now, Supreme Court case looks like it's going to get rid of. But I was talking to the ACLU, and I mentioned a bill on the AI cameras, or an amendment that I did, that they would not be able to sell the data. And when I presented that amendment that they would not be able to sell the data to another company, because it said you'd be able to, at the top, you'll be able to sell the data. Counties can sell the data, municipalities can sell the data. And then below it is municipalities have to get rid of the data after 2 years. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense, because up here you transfer the title to that data, right? You've given it away. And so, when I presented the amendment and they said, well, no, we can't take that amendment because it's kind of the purpose of the bill to make government cameras to be able to sell that data. So, the flock cameras or, however many, whatever other else they're called. I mean, we just keep hearing about the flock cameras. They're designed to, they're designed to gather data, right? And um, a lot of it is designed to uh, for commercial data, just like those laser scanners in the store. Those are not about. They do speed up the checkout. They do overbill you on probably a large number of occasions, and then you just don't know it because of the speed. But those are based. Those are all about gathering data, um, not not so much about not so much about saving the store time and money. So, anyways, talking to the ACLU about that. And then they brought me this bill talking about this bill about the data that's collected. And you're right. I mean, this is data that's available commercially, right? I mean, if you look at the movie 2000 Mules, or how they found a lot of the people that were in the vicinity of the Capitol on January 6th. They just went out, they brought in all of this data from the phones, and they your Fahrenheit 451, well, I guess it was night, the listening devices, and they just they found those people. So this is, but like if you look at a warrant, the police, if they want to track somebody, they can't just go put a GPS tracker on them, right? They would need a warrant to go do that. But now with this data, they just go out and they can just harvest that data, subscribe to the data, and they can find out exactly where you are, when, who you've been near, what phones you've been in, they can start correlating that. And now we'll have this exponentially increasing amount of data with the ability for AI to start digging through it at lightning speeds. And and so we need to rein in this police state at some time. So, I think there's going to be a press conference maybe tomorrow. I'm hoping that Michael Allen will reconsider their framing of the bill is, why are you doing this criminal justice bill? And it's like, well, that's kind of interesting, because I'm not really looking at it as a criminal justice bill. I'm looking at it as a pro-liberty bill, right? So we have the two sides. We have, the cops can have unlimited access to all the data. And well, okay, well, that's China. That's now you have the police state, you know, um, or you have none of the data, which is what some people would want, that in some states lean more that way, that they can have none of the data. Or you can have something in the middle, like, okay, we don't want, I mean, I can recognize that it's a valid tool, right? Um, it's a valid tool to, use these cameras, the data. So just have a warrant. It's just like anything else. The cops can't um, just put somebody and follow me around all day. I mean, let's say we had the manpower, and that's, you just put 50% of the people are informers, right? Like any communist country in trying to shape the social evolution, or they just kill you if they don't. But they can't just put a cop walking behind me all day long and then just say, well, you shouldn't mind that there's a cop right behind you, because unless you're going to be doing something wrong. Okay, well, but could you do a drone? Could you follow me with a drone all day and say, he's not touching you? It's like your sister in the car, not touching me, right? And it's not touching you. And it's like, okay, well, we can't do a drone without a warrant. That would be also, well, then why can you do it with a camera? Or in the case of, I can't put a tracker on your car uh, and follow you around all day. Ultimately, that's about information. What you're talking about is the information on where that person is. And we don't have a specific right to privacy, but it is one that um, is considered, derived from the other amendments, Sixth Amendment, Fourth Amendment, just that we have a right to privacy without, so I think they should also need a warrant for that data. Now, when they say, well, I don't think we'd be able to get a warrant in time for that data, it's like, okay, if you're not sure you can get a warrant for that data, then you're questioning, you are in that act, you are questioning the constitutionality of you having that data. So, again, the law enforcement, and I get it. I get that tension between what we need to do in the preservation of liberty. Um, if you're going to give up liberty for temporary security, you're not going to end up with either, right? So, um, I get that tension, and I do appreciate DA Allen reaching out to me and wanting to talk about this. We didn't get a chance to talk about it last week. I'm really hoping that if he goes ahead with the press conference, that he doesn't decide to say, well, I thought he was a Republican, but it turns out he's just pro-criminal, because the other side of that is I'm hoping that he doesn't say that. I know there are some Republicans that did last year. Um, but because the other side of that would be to say, like, it's just joking with the Colorado State Police, and they just said, well, we're going to be opposed to your bill. And I just said, well, then I'm just going to tell everybody that you're pro-police state. And then they're just like, oh, it's like, well, those are the options. You have none, all, or a warrant in the middle. And they said, well, I don't know if we have enough time to get a warrant to say, well, that's an internal process problem. Now, with the bill, also, I've seen there is a way for inside the Justice Department, they can form, a petition can be drafted. I drafted one on Friday that they could do this on their own. They could resolve it on their own. I would rather see them go that way rather than the legislature. I would rather see it handled inside the judicial and say, hey, we've done this for a long time. We haven't asked the question. We knew what the answer was, and that's why we didn't ask the question. But we need to codify this and we need to figure out the process so that we can use the data while we do preserve the rights. Because again, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. The purpose of DA's Allen's job, the DAs in general, their purpose is to secure the rights. It's not to make the trains run on time, right? It's to secure the rights of the citizens first and foremost. If you can use that data without violating the rights of citizens, then good on you. If you're using the data while violating the rights of the citizens, then that's a no-go and we want to stay away from that.
One of the big ways that the NSA has really trampled on our liberty is with their cooperation with other foreign agencies. For example, let's say you and I correspond via email,
Yep.
and that email happens to hit a server overseas, like let's say England. If that server goes to England, if that email goes through England, MI6 does not have certain, and England does not have certain, they don't have certain guarantees of privacy like we do via the Fourth Amendment. Now, what the NSA will do is they'll say, hey, can we take a look at this email between Rep deGraaf and Michael Vance? And they'll say, absolutely, sir. And they'll let us look at the entire email exchange. Uh, are there any sort of loopholes that we could possibly close up from a pro liberty perspective, like that loophole, especially when it comes to AI cameras, so that way we can ensure that they have to get a warrant?
Um, well, one of the things that I think it's like CSIJ, and that was one of the things that I suggested in there that and I think that's what it's called. There is a protocol or a set of regulations rules that govern how data is handled, like police. And so, it's kind of like, oh, well, we're having this contract agency do it. And they send the videos off to the Philippines to have somebody process them. Like, no, that is still you. You are still responsible for that data. And I think that would be one of those things is to, I'll have to look it up again, but you can maybe Google CSIJ comes to mind. But, you know, the protocol for handling it. When we look at election systems, of course, there's confidential, unclassified information. There's FISMA standards, FISMA standards, all kinds of standards for these data. And I think a lot of these agencies have just kind of gotten lax in terms of saying, oh no, we're gonna, and some of it is probably just rightfully going to take a lawsuit. It's going to take a lawsuit to say, um, and I think Article 5, Section 34 is always a good thing. Like, if the government gives money to it, it has absolute control. So if we're paying some contractor, some, you know, uh, AI camera contractor to gather data, well, they're accepting payment. For that contract, they are under the absolute control of the government. So if their people are not properly certified, they're not properly sworn, they're not, then I think that agency is operating outside of the constitutional, outside of the legal bounds. So I think some of it, it might take going to, filing a complaint with the Justice Department. Um, I'm learning some more about that, like filing appeals with I don't know if you followed that with about the asbestos. That's been a gentleman up in Denver was asking. It's like, oh, we could file a petition, get some information about that, and challenge the rulemaking procedure. Another one we can challenge this and. Um, like on this one, I might just submit it to the Justice Department and have them see if they can make the change internally. I'd rather they make the change internally rather than have legislation do it. But with that, I think again, it's going to take pushing back knowledge of that. I never thought of that with those servers, and then it also explains probably why some of these servers are, like it seems like they're intentionally routed overseas, like your email. It's like, you think, oh, it's for some other reason, but it's like, why would it go through England or why would it go through Germany? It's like, oh, it goes through England and Germany because then all of a sudden they can intercept it or something like that.
Absolutely crazy. Well, Representative deGraaf, we've kept you a good amount of time here, and really appreciate you joining us tonight. I know you got a lot of fans out there. I got to tell you, a lot of people really appreciate your work. When we announced that you were coming on, a lot of people, great comments, a lot of excitement. A lot of people are really appreciating what you're doing down there. So I just want you to know that, and I'm sure you do. But I can't be said enough. Keep up the good fight. And I just got one kind of final question, or to kind of start wrapping it up here. Like you said, the district attorneys are against your bill, 1037, to ban government purchase of personal data, right? They're against civil asset forfeiture reform. They're against all these things that are good pro liberty positions. And we're talking about district attorneys. We're talking about, probably the Colorado Municipal League, all these local governments, these law enforcement officers, and so probably some, pro law and order Republicans are going to be fighting you on that too. But what can we do on the outside to exert a little bit of pressure on them to try and help out with some of these bills, because they are good pro liberty bills that the majority of Coloradans, I believe, would agree with, even if our district attorneys don't.
Yeah, I think most people do. When you say about the district attorneys, they'll say, "Well, we're going to lose this tool and this ability," and hopefully, I haven't turned away too many fans if I've rambled on too much. But the we'll lose this tool, and people say, "Well, we should have it," and then you start saying, and we in general we've grown to accept that all this data is out there on us and we can't do anything about it really. But it becomes a different matter entirely when you say, what do you think about the law enforcement having all of that data? And what do you think about them being able to, um, I don't know, maybe they just start giving out tickets for you jaywalking because you cut across the traffic and they can start scrubbing that, or maybe, issuing everybody speeding tickets for going down I-25 at 76.5 miles an hour. Um, so what can you do? I think you can contact your reps, especially those reps that are going to hear this. These are going to go to the judiciary. These are good pro-liberty bills. You can contact your DAs. Last year, the DAs on civil asset forfeiture were quite proud of the fact that they voted against it, that they unanimously voted against it. You can contact your own DA and ask them why. You can ask, you can go to your county. Your county meetings and ask why. It's gonna take putting pressure on these individuals where they know that you're paying attention. They know that you know your constitutional rights. And I don't want to make law enforcement jobs harder. I mean that's not the goal. The goal is pro liberty. So again, that's why, okay, a good compromise is the warrant. Do we need to amend something in the warrant seeking position, or is that something that's internal? So testifying in committee, that's a lot of people will look at these bills and go, well, that's a no-brainer. And I don't need to testify on that because that should just pass without any problem. Or then the next bill, they'll be like, well, I'm not going to testify on that because there's no way I'm going to change their mind. But again, it helps it helps when people know that people are paying attention. If well, like you said, pro law and order Republicans, I'm a pro law and order Republican, but my first role is in securing the rights of the citizens, and making sure that the Republicans know that their first role, that the oath that they've taken is to secure the rights of the citizens. Now, everything else comes after that. Their first and primary role is to secure the rights of citizens.
Awesome, sir. Well, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Michael, any final thoughts here as we wrap it up with Representative deGraaf?
Yes, spur of the moment idea. Just thought of it. A lot. We know you live in Colorado Springs, Rep. DeGraff. Your district is Colorado Springs, and that's a little bit of a drive on a daily basis. That gives you plenty of time to possibly debrief. Well, that I would love to see a Ken DeGraff District 22 representative podcast where you sit there in your car and you just kind of give your thoughts on the day as you debrief. I would love that. I would listen. I'm sure Brandon will listen. I'm sure we would, almost every single person listening today would listen to the Ken DeGraff podcast. So
I think I would have to, based on somebody's chiming in today. I think with the nudge, I was fat. If you, I don't know if you saw that article that somebody passed. I reposted it. I think I would call it the anti-nudge or something like that. Would be interesting. I'd probably have to have one of you guys to talk to on the way home. So I mean, be careful what you're signing yourself up for. You know,
I love it. I love
we
it.
might just have a recorded phone call on the way home.
That'd be fantastic.
Not a bad idea. Well, Representative DeGraaf, any final words for viewers, for the good people of Colorado here before we let you go so you can prepare for another exciting week down at the Capitol?
Another exciting week in the Gold Dome cesspool. No, that's about it. Vigilance is the price of liberty. Slavery is the price of apathy. Stay engaged, win your precinct. Those are, I mean, I just don't have any. I just don't have any complex secrets or anything like that. We just have to be engaged, one foot in, keep going, win your precinct.
Awesome.
Maybe I'll
Awesome.
sign my letter. Maybe I'll change that from my emails just to say win your precinct.
Well, there you go. I like it. Well, awesome, sir. Really appreciate you. Keep up the great work. Hope to see you down at the Capitol sometime soon. And yeah, just thank you for everything you do. You get a lot of great comments here in the chat tonight, a lot of good accolades, and I know people really appreciate what you're doing. So thank you so much, and
Excellent.
have a great rest of your night. And we'll
Oh,
probably see you down at the Capitol some point here.
all right. Thanks everybody for joining us, and thanks you guys for taking the time to chat.
Hey, thank you.